This is one of the many series that I've put together that I call The Path to Potential, Looking Beyond Autism. If I had listened to my doctor, if I had listened to my pediatric consultant, if I had listened even to those that are in this community of children that have got autism, if I had listened to some of them, I wouldn't have been here with my son today. I want you to really come to these master classes, not because you're coming to listen to a clinician. Yes, you can do that, take notes, but I really want you to bring your heart and your emotions into this space, because that's how you are going to learn. When we ignite that fire in you, you will have the strength to go beyond any challenge that you may be having to support your child who has a diagnosis of autism. That is actually my little boy under that bench there. That was in the park. We went everywhere. He just needed to look for a place to hide. The picture down below, he had an ATEC score of 154 points. This was when everything was really dark and really, really gloomy. He was nonverbal. He had a lot of sensory issues. I think the sensory issues were the ones that were very crippling for me and him. It was very hard for us to go to places because he would really, really struggle. And it was even hard to go to my sister's places or my family's places because he struggled with a lot of things, the scents, the sounds, etc. And I remember at some point, my son was so scared of my sister's husband, not because of the way he looked, but because of his voice. The moment he would walk into the house, bless him, and he said a word, Jojo would freak out. He would really just freak out, go into this massive scream, and literally like a ghost has just, attacked him. It was really that painful, to the point that my uncle, we call them uncles in my language, he would come and just be quiet and hold him, and he would be fine. And he would walk out and then talk to me quietly, if he wanted to, and never stayed a long time, and then he would go. That's how crippling sound sensitivity was for my son. He walked around everywhere he went with ear defenders. The picture on top there, that's when he had an ATEC score of 15 points. That, I love that picture. And I know you may be looking at it and saying, but how is he dressed? What kind of dressing is that? But for me, that was Jojo winning. That was Jojo winning. And that was me winning to an extent. Because what that was saying to me was nothing. Well done for not giving up. Well done for not listening to that person. Well done for not following the mainstream, the main way of doing things. Well done for thinking outside the box. Well done for waking up one more night and showing up one more day to support your child. And that was him. He dressed himself up. He was wearing jeans. This kid used to walk around naked in the house. This kid had a specific type of pants that he used to wear. Other than that, he never used to wear those things. And on this day, my son dressed himself up. And I said to him, Gigi, let me take you a picture. And he just stood there and I took that picture. And I remember going back home and doing his ATEC score. And he was at 15. And I was so proud of the hard work that he had gone through. Let's look at a little clip that I've put together for you guys. Jojo, are you ready to learn?
Yes.
Are you ready to learn?
Yes.
What day is it today?
Wednesday.
And what date is it? Okay, do you have the spirit?
Oh, yes.
Do you have the spirit?
Yes.
Do you have the spirit? So that is a snapshot in where we've come from. and where we are. In this series of the master classes, we will be covering practical, and we will be looking at why things are happening so that you can understand why you need to act. And I'll be sharing with you some of the solutions that are there. But just a disclaimer, guys, you've got to remember this app just classes to inform you. These are not intended to prescribe, diagnose, or to recommend a prescription for you. I really want to encourage you to seek professional support or help or advice before you make any changes for your child. I will be sharing with you my services as we go, but for now, I just want us to bear that in mind. For children that have got autism, there are a number of factors that drive the inability to focus. There are a number of triggers and drivers that actually contribute to them not being able to focus. And what we see in mainstream is they give you all these tools. ABA, they give you all these tools. Speech and language gives you all these tools. Occupational therapy gives you all these tools. But we are not looking at the child holistically to see if we can optimize focus. And we are focused on, well, the child is not focused. It's because they've got autism. But that's not quite true, as you will see in this in this master's class. The brain is the brain. If your brain is going to be doing what we are going to be talking about, then you will not be focused. So whether your child has a diagnosis of autism or they don't have a diagnosis of autism, these principles will affect their level of focus. So in this master's class, we are going to be looking at the impact of lifestyle, the role of nutrition, the role of neuroplasticity, and the complementary tools in enhancing focus. We are also going to look at the neurotransmitters that influence focus and attention. And then we're going to look at the supplements to enhance focus. At the end of the master's class, we will look at how we can put all this together to support the children to be focused. What is making the child unfocused? What is making the child not have the ability to sit down for 3 minutes and pay attention to what it is that you're doing? You're talking to your child, practically they're in their own world. What is causing that? Okay, those are the drivers and the triggers. What is making the child stay in that place? My son never used to be able to sit for 2 minutes. And this used to be very frustrating in ABA because I would have spent so much money to get this consultant to come, and my son would be all over the place, all over the place, all over the place. What are the triggers? What is causing your child to do that? If you can hold the thought for a minute, what do you think is happening with your child? Why is your child doing that? Another child is able to sit for 5 minutes, but your baby is not sitting for 5 minutes. And I remember in the deep dive workshop, one of the moms says to me, Natsai, my son can't even sit for 2 minutes. For 2 minutes, I can put a timer for 2 minutes. My son will not be able to sit down for 2 minutes. But in 6 weeks after the deep dive, she sent me a testimonial and said, Natsai, you won't believe it. This kid is sitting for 20 minutes. And now even my son sits. So what was happening then that made these kids not focus? What is happening now for your child? Just write it down, write your thoughts, and see as we go whether you can identify those things in this class. What I also want you to do is, as we think about focus, I want you to measure how bad this situation is for you. 0, focus is not an issue. 10, focus is an issue. Measure that, okay? Measure that. And the reason I say measure that and write it somewhere in your child's journal, write it somewhere, is because after you've implemented all these things that we're going to be talking about, or after you've put an action plan in place, you want to come back and say, yes, it worked, or yes, it didn't work, if focus doesn't change. As we go, I just wanted to share this testimonial with you. This is one of my parents that came in the deep dive. and she gave me this beautiful feedback. She practically sent me videos upon videos of her child before and after the deep dive. It was like night and day. And you will see when we look at the labs today, what may be contributing to why our children tend to have that massive flip in focus when we put in therapeutic protocols, when we change something that is driving them, when we remove that very thing that is causing that issue with focus, you will see why we have this massive flip, massive change from inability to sit down for 2 minutes to being able to sit down for 20 minutes. So this is what Theo says. Theo says, I am overwhelmed with joy, Nancy. You have changed my life, my son's life. I don't know how to testify because of you. You fed me with knowledge and my family is gradually becoming free from bondage. I am 2 weeks into the GPS diet. We put him on a GPS diet, which practically means no grains, no potatoes, and no sugar. And the results are amazing. My son used to wake up at 4:30 a.m. daily, and a neighbor told me my son used to wake her up with noise. But the story has now changed. My boy now sits for more than 20 minutes without getting to scatter things around the home. His bowel movements is superb, and God has used you to write my son's story. I will keep testifying. Those who laughed at me will surely laugh with me. This really gives me goosebumps because this was more so like my son. My son was ridiculously hyperactive. But this is beautiful. This kid still has autism, by the way. But if you want to think about the relief that the parent is having, just think about the relief that mom has that her child is now, less hyperactive. His son is not making noises, and he now is able to focus, sit down for 20 minutes. How amazing is that? Really, how amazing is that? Later on, you'll hear from one of my other clients. Again, these things are possible when we put in therapeutic protocols, when we remove the irritants, when we remove the things that are irritating our children's brains, when we remove the things that are agitating our children. These things are possible. So really, I really want you to really pay attention to what I'm about to share with you and apply those little things that I'm talking about here, because they do make a difference. So let's look at a case study. We're going to look at a case study through labs, because these master classes are there to show you what is happening organically with our children. Because when we just talk, sometimes it just becomes talk. And for me, I struggled to keep at it with my son. I was so inconsistent with Jojo. And with that, it meant that the majority of the things that we were doing, they were not working, because I really didn't believe that this kind of thing is really possible or something is wrong. In my head, I seriously just don't bother, Natsi. That's autism. Don't bother, Natsi. That's autism. That's what I heard until I started doing labs. And this is why you find that in clinic, the second phase, we run a collective of labs. And one of the labs that I do in clinic is the organic acid testing. This gives me detailed information covering 9 systems. And once we correct those things, our children are relieved from distress. Our children can get to sleep at night, can get to focus, can get to learn. That's amazing. This is why this platform, this series, is about us looking beyond autism. Go past that diagnosis. What else is happening? Let's look at this lab. So this is an organic test. This is for a young man. He's about 3. And when I see an organic test like this, I'm going to be honest with you. First, I get relieved, not because we have issues, but because we know that we have an issue that has a solution. We have gone beyond autism. The issues and the struggles that this young man is going through, there is a solution. And normally what we see when we do the initial consultations, we can almost predict what we are going to see on the organic acid test. And I know you're saying, I say, come on, so why are we bothering ourselves doing this? But we've got to understand we are humans. And for me, I love doing these labs because they validate the path or the direction we are going to be going with the child. The majority of the hocus pocus that is happening in the world, it's too much, right? And it causes a lot of confusion. If you're just going to start telling the parent, oh, your child is hyperactive because he's yeasty, because we know children with autism, they have got issues with yeast. But you've been doing antifungals for years and your kid is still yeasty. Is that still yeasty? Or remove salicylates. Salicylates are problematic in children with autism. For how long am I going to remove salicylates? Not saying. And we or give B12 or give omega-3. It becomes a rabbit hole when we focus heavily on the diagnosis of autism. But when we have labs like this, we know. So for example, if you're working with me, we work in phases. We know we're doing the digestive system. We are then moving to this. We are then moving to that. We are gaining traction in the right direction. And if you don't have labs, you're like this, and constantly going round and round. And I must admit, when we move past the diagnosis of autism, what we are doing is we are moving past that, I want my child to talk, I want my child to talk, I want my child to talk. But you're now looking at what else could be happening that my child is struggling with, that could be causing this to happen. Okay, and we are moving away from, I want my child to talk, I want my child to talk, I want my child to play with other children, focusing on the known symptoms associated with autism and looking at the child as a human being. Okay, so here we go. This is an organic acid test. As you can see, in the first markers, we're looking at intestinal microbiome overgrowth. Obviously, this kid has got issues with candida. And I strongly believe this could have been worse if this child had not done the initial phase, because I say to mom, after 4 weeks, you will do the labs. That's how I do it. I always say, let's do the labs after 4 weeks, because I want the body to be coming down to baseline so we can see what is happening organically. So he's not far off, he's about 57. The marker here, 57, we want it to be below 50. But 57, that still means he has candida issues, also has issues with bacteria issues. So we want to address that. And we want to repopulate. We want to repopulate the gut. That's what we are going to be doing. But overall, this is not a scary gut as we usually see. But even with that, we're talking about focus. When you have candida and bacteria in issues in your stomach, you're gonna struggle with focus. Remember, yeast causes a lot of confusion. These are the kids that are laughing away, spitting, itchy bottom. The tongue usually is very coated, very jittery, zero focus, and hyperactive. Okay, yeast does that as well. So when we address yeast and when we address bacteria for this child, if this is the main driver of the lack of focus, then we are expecting to see focus come back. But even if it's not the main driver, remember when we started, we said measure the severity of where your child is. What you practically want to do is you stop the video and ask yourself, how bad is this? How bad is lack of focus? Zero focus is not a bad thing. bad is not a big deal. 10, we have a big issue with focus. How bad is it with your child? Measure that. And then when we address this, we are now looking, when we do our follow-up, I'm asking the question, how bad is the focus between 0 and 10? If mom started at 10, if the child started at 10, what we want to see when we address yeast and bacteria, we want it to come down to at least 6 or 7, 6 and 5, somewhere there. That's what we want it to be, because we know Candida drives a lot of jitteriness and the lack of focus. Okay, so again, we want to think about what diet is good for this child, so that we don't feed this yeast, so that we don't continue to feed the bacteria. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next phase for this child. Then the other thing that we get to assess when we do the organic acid test that tells us we may have issues with focus is our oxalates. And the organic acid test is able to measure that for us. Oxalates are really like glassy crystal particles, and they lodge themselves in the tissue and in the brain. They're extremely painful. For the majority of the children that have got oxalate issues, what you find is they make a lot of noise, very hyperactive, always crying. Again, with this little kid, we had that. Okay, we had that. So we've already started phasing the oxalates out of his diet, because when he came to clinic, mom says she had started removing oxalates, but there was still a lot of oxalates in his diet. Again, you see how nutrition contributes to the brain function, to the ability of the brain to focus. So what we're going to be doing with this young man is really address oxalates directly, when most likely in the next phase, alongside the candida and the bacteria. Most likely we will be putting in a protocol that directly addresses the subject of the oxalates. We want them to be broken down, the crystals, we want them to be broken down, and we want to mop them out, and we want them out of the child. And usually it takes plus or minus 3 to 6 months, and they are painful. Okay, but it's a massive relief. There is a lot of studies that, the majority of children that have been put on low oxalate diets, they have really done well. In clinic, we lose big ATEC points. Big ATEC points. We drop a lot of ATEC points when we address oxalates, because they are very painful and they drive the majority of the behaviors our children have. It causes majority of oxalates. They drive constipation, driving the harboring of parasites, yeast and fungus and bacteria, you name it. And of course, oxalates are inflaming. They drive neuroinflammation, which you will see as well with this beautiful little kid. So the next phase we want to look at is the pyruvic. The levels are too low. When we're thinking about pyruvic, we're thinking about energy production. When we look at the mitochondria, if your battery life is not working, it's very likely that you will struggle with the energy to engage. So you can see that this young man needs support. In most cases, when we see Malik like this, we are automatically thinking about the mitochondria that is struggling, mitochondrial dysfunction, which sometimes can be a genetic subject, and sometimes it's not a genetic subject. It's probably just a need for niacin or CoQ10, which we can actually bring in to support this young man. And the reason I bring these things up is so that you can be aware that this is not an ABA subject. This is not a speech and language subject. This is not an intensive therapy one-on-one subject. This is a metabolic subject. And when we address these metabolic issues, the child gets relieved, and they will want to engage with the others. They will want to learn what you are talking about. They will want to express themselves. Now, this is the most fascinating area that I tend to look at. And when children come to clinic, mostly those that I work with that have got complex autism, this is the area that is really murky. And unfortunately, a lot of practitioners, they miss that. They miss that. What am I looking for when I want a child to be focused? Okay, I'm looking at the neurotransmitters, dopamine. Let's talk about dopamine. I'm looking, if you look at this kid's dopamine levels, they're low. Epinephrine is on the low side. Let's talk about dopamine and epinephrine for just a few minutes. There is also serotonin, acetylcholine, and GABA, but unfortunately, we do not have a lot of time for us to discuss this. If you want to learn more, of course, about the neurotransmitters, the deep dive is open. But for now, we're going to focus on dopamine and norepinephrine. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is responsible with the motivation for me to do something, because I am going to be rewarded in doing something. So when it comes to focus, we want our children to have the right levels of dopamine. We do not want to have excess dopamine, or we do not want to have low dopamine, because we want them to be aroused just moderately enough for them to be able to engage. But as you can see on that child's organic acid test, dopamine is very low. So he doesn't feel the need to engage or to do anything. And I usually have a number of children like that, to be very honest, where mom says there's nothing more that motivates him because dopamine is completely low. So we want to correct that. Dopamine is responsible for the right balance of focus, relaxation, and regulating the goal-directed behavior and cognition function. And one thing that we also know about dopamine is because it's the movement, neurotransmitter. It's responsible for that movement, thought, and speech. When it comes to children with autism, I want ice cream. I've got to get up and go get the ice cream. I want to feel good. I've got to flap my hands. I have to line my things again. I've got to check the door again. So it is responsible for that movement. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And if you've got low dopamine, you're not bothered. But if you have excess dopamine, you're going to be hyperactive. We can correct this. The dopamine imbalance, especially, for example, in the kid that we were talking about, by bringing in supplements like vitamin C, copper, B6, magnesium, alpha-lipoic acid, selenium, blueberry extract, NAC, B6 and B5, sorry about that typo, B6 and B5, L-tyrosine, and mucuna. These things are very, very powerful, and they are actually able to support the child to regulate their dopamine levels. Norepinephrine. This is the primary neurotransmitter for arousal. So some of the children, they are not alert. They will not engage because they are not alert enough. They cannot hold their attention. They cannot, engage because they are not aroused enough. And I remember very well with Jojo, this was a big issue. He was unaware. He was not aware of his environment. He was not interested at all in what was happening in his environment, zero arousal. So we see that when a child has got severe complex autism and they are struggling to focus, the first thing we think about is they're even alert. Are they even aware of where they are? And if you look at that child's organic acid test, again, you see norepinephrine is very, very low. So now you can couple norepinephrine being low and dopamine being low. The child is not going to be alert enough. We don't want excess, because you'll be hyperactive. We just want the moderate levels so that we can be able to engage and to focus, to be there. But in this case, with this kid, he needs to be aroused. He needs to be woken up. And what we use in clinic, vitamin C, copper, B6, magnesium, L-tyrosine again, omega-3 fatty acids, and rhodiola. These are very effective in bringing norepinephrine up. But again, you've got to remember, we don't want excess. So we just want to be able to bring it up enough to allow the child to be aware and to be connected. Again, you can see the importance of just a good diet, importance of bringing in the key core factors like magnesium and B6, very, very important in regulating neurotransmitters. But again, can you see what I'm trying to say here? It is not all autism. So if we can go back and look at the neurotransmitters, we can actually see that why is this child not focused? Why is mom saying this kid is nonverbal? Why is mom saying this kid is hyperactive? This kid is very stimmy. This kid is very jittery. It really has nothing to do with the structure of the brain as per se, or the diagnosis. The biochemistry is not right. It needs to be corrected. And now when we look at neuroinflammation, and I know you guys have heard me talk about neuroinflammation a lot. When we have high cholinergic and high cholinergic, we know the child is struggling with neuroinflammation, and we need to calm the system down. We need to remove the things that are driving neuroinflammation. That can be diet, oxalates, excess dopamine for some children, salicylates, etc., and food allergies, leaky gut, heavy metals. All those things can affect a child's focus. So in this case, we are looking at addressing neuroinflammation for a little while, for plus or minus 3 to 6 months. We will be focusing on directly addressing neuroinflammation for this child. And obviously, if he has low norepinephrine, it's very likely that he will have low vitamin C, which is actually an antioxidant, which is needed to dampen inflammation for the majority of children. We can really go to town with this kid. The whole lab results, they're indicative of there is no way I'm going to focus. Folate metabolism, ketone and fatty acid oxidation, really high markers. And then when we come here, the lack of B6 that is needed for the neurotransmitters we've just spoken about. And look at where vitamin C is. And yet this kid really has an indication that he has a lot of neuroinflammation, low vitamin C. The other thing that drives lack of focus, neuroinflammation, etc., is toxic loads, heavy toxic loads. So we can address all these things. That's the beauty about it. Unfortunately, I do not have the time to be able to go through the whole lab results, but you have an indication of how struggling this 3-year-old is. And the beauty about it, all these things, we can address these things. Not immediately. It's not going to be that supplement did this. No. This is going to be work which has to be done in phases, intensively, thoughtfully, sensitively, because this is a sensitive kid as well, because every system is struggling. So this kid is not going to be the one that we go in there and just whoa, whoa, whoa. It's possibly going to be a lot of gut work first, a lot of antioxidants, and a lot of rest, and really rest and just play, because this is a very inflamed baby. So this is what is happening biochemically. Okay, this is just a snapshot of what we are looking at. And we do this in the deep dive. We really go into looking at what is happening. What is happening? If this is happening, what is happening? If this is happening, this is happening. We tend to look at labs for the majority of children. And of course, giving you strategic solutions on what it is that you should be doing, when and how to support your child. Let's look at what the deep dive provides for us. You probably have been hearing me say deep dive, deep dive. This is a program that I've put together specifically for parents that are ready. This is a deep dive. This is us really diving deep and rolling our sleeves so that we can support our children to get to the other side quicker without wasting time. The first week is introduction to the deep dive. Of course, understanding autism, self-care is very, very important. I strongly believe if your mindset is not right, like I was saying, in terms of preparation, it is very, very unlikely that you'll be able to see through it. We're going to be looking at the clues in your own story, because this is your journey. As you heard me talk about Jojo's journey, that's our journey. You have your own journey, and it's going to be very unique to you. So that it's important that you understand why you are where you are right now with your child. Putting a team together, this may mean you getting your kids, the siblings, on board. The beautiful thing about the deep dive, you can get the whole family to come and watch and learn with you, alongside you. Week 2, we're looking at cleaning the environment, one of the biggest one. Why did I not put it on week 1? Because if I put it on week 1, you'll be running. That's the storyline. You'll be running. You won't see the importance of doing what it is that we're doing. Why are you running? Because we are human beings, and we are creatures of culture. We never like change. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, you know what, the toiletries you're using is causing a child to be irritated, then you will be running. So it's important that you're really pumped up. You have a reason for understanding why you're doing it. This is why we want you to understand autism from our point of view. Week 3, you're looking at the 3 C's, the key principles of eating. And then we dive deep into implementation of the therapeutic diet. The majority of my parents, they have stuck with it for years. So it's very healing, it's very therapeutic, and it's very successful, and it is outlined on what you're going to be doing, and you can use it for a year or 2. Week 4, supplementation. We're looking at the core factors. We've already spoken about the core factors in this class. We looked at the key core factors like magnesium and B6. We are going to be talking about some of the most important supplements specific for each and every system. Where do we start? In most cases, for the majority of the kids that have come to clinic, and this is almost 99% of the children that have come to clinic, we usually have to do the gastrointestinal system, the immune system, and the nervous system. So we have to do this to make sure that the other systems are supported. Because what you usually see is that the mitochondria is not working because the immune system is not working. The mitochondria is not working because the gastrointestinal tract is not working. The mitochondria is not working because the nervous system is not working. Okay. The detoxification systems are not working because the immune system is hyper-inflamed. The detoxification system is not working because the nervous system is in the sympathetic mode. The detoxification system is not working because the GI system is not doing great. So these systems are the pillars to healing, especially when it comes to children that have got complex autism. And this is why it looks like that. Get to week 5, where it becomes more interesting. At this point, I'm expecting your child to have dropped quite a lot of ATEC points. And then you start with neuroplasticity. You then think about this subject that we were talking about. How can we get the child to be more focused? How can we get the child to say more words? How can we get the child to learn? And for some, you may want to consider homeschooling, and I'll be giving you the reasons why homeschooling for your child will probably be the best decision you can ever make, especially in today's world. If you're in England with me, you've probably looked at the report. The 26% increase in the number of children that are being homeschooled. That's very, very high, and there must be a reason for that. And our children do not have time. Time is not on their side. We do understand the brain is time sensitive, especially in early years. So we do not have time to waste and to fight and to go into tug of war. We need to focus. We need to work with our children in a very short period, and then we can allow them to go back to school where possible. But for those that are in good schools, of course, you can always keep your child in that good school. And I explain how you can assess your situation, whether your child should go to school or your child shouldn't go to school. The last week of the deep dive, we talk about laboratory tests. We're looking at labs just like we've looked at labs today. And this is very interesting. And we also support you to order your own labs. So as you can see, it is very thorough and it is very intensive. And within 6 weeks, really what I'm expecting is a massive drop in ATEC points. Let's listen to what one of the moms that was in our last workshop said. But what was the ATEC score?
63.
63. Where was he before?
Yeah. He was 103.
He was 103 before.
Yes, yeah.
Hold on. Just don't scare me.
Yeah, really. In the beginning, he was 103. Yeah.
He was 103.
Yes.
And now
And
he's...
he dropped.
Oh my goodness, I'm proud of you. I think you're on the lead board in the speed of dropping the ATEC points. And I'm really proud of you. The higher the ATEC, the more miracles you see.
Yeah.
And the more exciting it becomes. You're on the right direction, mommy.
He dropped too much, really. Since I stopped the B12, he's very quiet and also understand things. I'm really happy with that. And also, when I tell him something to do, he understand also tidy up his things. I'm really happy with that, really. And also eating, he's eating more, playing by himself with his brother. I'm really happy.
But sometimes it's the basic things that make a big difference.
Yeah, so much. I stopped the B12 and the B because you advised me to stop all the Bs. I stop it and I see so much really improvement with him. I can't tell you how I'm happy with him, really.
So yes, this is real. What we do works, and I really want to invite you to considering it. Now let's go into action and see what we can do for our children a little bit more. So what can we do to support our children moving forward? We've looked at the labs. You've heard the testimonial. You've heard about my son. What can we do? Now say, give me something to do today. While I'm thinking about the deep dive, give me something to do today. The first and foremost important thing that you can do is to changing the lifestyle. The lifestyle is very important because when you have a nervous system that is dysregulated, the child is not going to focus. It's impossible. Okay? So look at your lifestyle. Is it a calm home where your child is? Is there a lot of pressure? Is the child being made to do this and that? Is there an overload of responsibility on that little kid's shoulders? Wake up, go to school, catch that bus, move from there and move from there. So you really want to assess your child's daily schedule. Is it a healing schedule? Again, we cover that quite a lot in the deep dive when we look at lifestyle. But in this case, I really want you to do that. Think about removing screen. Reduce it to at least 30 minutes a day. Because the majority of children, they really get overstimulated with a lot of screen and they struggle to focus. Make sure your baby is going to sleep on time. If your child is not sleeping, consider a sleep hygiene. We will be sharing one with you that you can actually use. But if this is an ongoing subject, then I may say, hey, let's look out, let's work together and let's get the child to sleep. If the child doesn't sleep, it's very, very unlikely that they will be able to focus. Nutrition can actually irritate the brain or fuel the brain. So again, I want you to go and look at your food diaries and remember 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon of sugar. Reduce the amount of sugar that your child is having. There's a lot of studies, especially for the kids that are in England with me, that before they go to school, some of them have already had 10, 20 teaspoons of sugar without mommy knowing that they're giving their child sugar. So think 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon of sugar. Look at the boxes of cereals. Get rid of juices and things like orange juice, etc. Reduce those things, because that drives neuroinflammation and that drives a dysregulation in blood sugar. So remove sugar and bring in a diet that is healing proteins and fats. We want a stable blood sugar throughout the day. It's very, very important to supporting focus for children that have got a diagnosis of autism. And most importantly, you may want to consider removing any additives. There is a lot of studies that indicate that additives actually irritate the brain, and they are behind a number of ADHD, ADD, behaviors. So you want to remove anything that is yellow, green, and red, anything that is an additive, even those that are natural colors. You want to remove that out of your child's diet. And so that is a little bit about nutrition. But of course, as you saw in that little child's labs, that child needs to go on a low oxalate diet. And that child needs to go on a salicylate diet, low sugar diet. And we will need to customize that child's diet to make sure that they are still well nourished and they don't go hungry, because that's a lot of things that we will be removing. But it is very, very possible when we do one-on-ones. Supplements to consider: B6, magnesium, and zinc. They are cofactors to a number of enzymic reactions. And obviously, once we support those neurotransmitters, we can calm the children down, especially B6, because it's a cofactor to GABA, serotonin, and norepinephrine. It's a cofactor to all the neurotransmitters as well as magnesium. But in clinic, we can bring in things like, once we get the labs, we can bring in the new supplements that I spoke about when we were looking at the labs, and even more if the labs indicate that. Complementary tools. I cannot end this conversation without talking about complementary tools, because I will be a fraud. As you can see, I am wearing a for brain. I have been wearing it throughout this session. Why? It's because it supports my voice. I tend to have endurance. And when I become squeaky, it feeds back, it will feed back to me that I am not speaking louder. It helps modulate my voice. And for the majority of children in clinic, I tend to recommend the for brain. We use quite a lot of tools in clinic, things like LTP, things like SSP. But in this case, I am recommending the for brain because it is really good in supporting focus and modulating voice output for the majority of children that have got autism. So, for example, some children actually do not know they are talking. They're talking in their head, but they think that their voice is coming out. So when you put the for brain and they cannot hear themselves, then they will open their mouth and speak. It is so true. Some children actually just think they are talking because they are thinking, but they are not saying the words. And the for brain tends to give them that feedback. The bone conduction transmits the child's own voice via as you can see here, this is the bone conduction. It just transmits the child's own voice and they can hear it. With the device, it also comes with a connection that you can actually put on your shirt when you're working with your child. And when you talk, your child is able to hear. It tends to stimulate that bone conduction, and your child is going to hear a lot. It brings that child to that aroused state that they are able to pay attention. And of course, this increases attention, memory, and sensory processing. It also gives that child that natural quality of perception of own voice. And obviously what we tend to see is, improved speech, improved communication, improved attention. And obviously in this case, we are looking at focus. We also recommend in clinic is the sensory. This is a program that consists of well-designed music alongside movement-based exercises So you'll get your phone with the outlined exercises, daily exercises from day 1 to day 40. These exercises, you will have to do them daily. What I usually say is I usually get the dads to do this because they get to interact with their children a little bit more and they get to have fun. At the same time, the child is listening to music. You know, the brain is a musical organ. The bone conduction is stimulating the brain, as well as the reflexes are being integrated. So this brings me to the end of this session, and I hope I've been of service to you, and I hope I've given you enough to do at the end of this week, and I hope I'll be able to see you in the next Masterclass. But for now, I hope you get to join me in the deep dive and look out for the emails that we will be sending you with supporting resources that you can get started in supporting your child to be more focused. So for example, the For Brain is a great one to bring on board. The Sensory for those that have already been doing a lot of work. And of course, if you are just new on this path, let's get the sugar out. Let's get the kids sleeping. Let's create a heaven in our own home. But for now, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, bye for now.